and welcome to this week's edition of the Collingwood Forum BigFooty podcast. I am the Mighty T, and joining me tonight we have a few very special guests. Introducing first the Golden Greek, Shpeshal Ed. How you doing,
G'day guys, how are you?
Yeah, not doing too bad, not too bad. Also introducing, I believe for the first time on the podcast, Matty. How you doing tonight, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How you all doing?
Yeah, we're not doing too bad. It's been a good week so far, and for the very first time, we have an opposition poster joining our main panel. And from the Sydney Swans board, we introduce Vonn.
Hey guys, how you all going today?
Yeah, not too bad, Vonn. Not too bad. Good to have a Swan and apparently a closeted Pies supporter on the board, but we'll get to that at some point. Hey Ed, how did you find this weekend's performance, mate?
Yeah, it was probably one of the best I've seen for a long, long time. I was mentioning, obviously, before we went on that it's probably the only replay I've repeatedly watched since 2010, I think. I just finished watching it for the fourth time earlier tonight.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Matty, do you echo the sentiments?
Yeah, I think that's right. Now, 2011 was a very easy season. We didn't have many great games, and last year was a bit of a battle. So, as I said previously, the only other game that you can compare it to is the Geelong game earlier on this year.
And we've battled a fair bit this year and last year with the injuries. And it was good to put a four-quarter performance in finally. And Vonn, your boys, they were probably a little bit more challenged than you would have liked on the weekend.
Yeah, look, it was a really close game, and I think we learnt a few crucial lessons in work rate, which I don't think a lot of Swan supporters were expecting this weekend, but it was a good game.
The Dogs have this tendency of putting on a lot of pressure on the inside, and I think they're really improving as a team. But you know, the masters of the inside ball are the Swans, and it remains that way. So, no, certainly a good win to get over here against an opponent with a little bit to prove. Now, boys, we're going to look closely for a few minutes at the Essendon game, or the game with the unfair handicap against us, as I like to call it. Where did you see the game won on the weekend, Ed? How do you think we went about winning the game?
I think the intensity is basically.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that, Ed?
The effort was the best part.
The effort and the intensity. Anything in particular about it? I mean, this is something that we haven't shown for a while. So, what was it was it just the pressure that we put on?
Yeah, the pressure, and I just think they looked like there was genuine desire for the ball there. That just hasn't been there pretty much all year.
Yeah, when we put pressure like that on the ball carrier, we're just a different team. I noticed I think it was 54 tackles at half time, which, on target for a world record almost.
And the incredible thing about that was I think that we outpossessed them by, I think it was at that point about 50 touches as well. So we're getting a lot more of the ball and still putting that kind of pressure on. But the real question is, where has it been all season so far, Matty?
I think it's been a mixture of not having the right players out there and the right formula. Like, we haven't had, that was one of the first games this year we've had all the ball, beam, side, bottom, Pendlebury, Swan all together in the same midfield. And I think that is really important to who we are. We're a midfield-based team.
Look, starting to get a few of those players back who have helped, and probably operating with a more consistent structure is helping too, which we'll touch on a bit later on. But Ed, how have you found Beams' return to the side? I mean, it's almost like he slotted in right where he left off.
Yeah, well, obviously match fitness hasn't been a problem for him because he came straight back in after, I think, one game in the VFL.
Yep.
And he looked like he hadn't lost any touch or any sort of speed, fitness or anything at all. So he's obviously eased a crap load of the pressure that was on Swan and Pendlebury all year, which has helped them in the last few weeks as well.
What was that, Matty?
Does he look bigger than he did last year? I've just noticed around his thighs and his buttocks basically looks a lot bigger.
He's got a bit more size on him now, doesn't he? I remember Cory going down to a training session, even posting that he looked like a monster of a man, just as he strolled around near the Westpac Centre. So that's obviously helping. One of the things that I've noticed is that we have been low on clearances this year, and I think that has to do one part with our ruck division and another part with obviously our on ballers on the ground. Do you think we should look at, last year Beams was our best clearance player and our best player by, in my opinion, a little way. Do you think we should look at trying to get Beams into more centre bounces, Ed?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, although to be completely honest with you, from everything I've seen, he generally has been, hasn't he?
I think our starting three, and correct me if I'm wrong, boys, is they go in with Bull, Pendlebury and Swan.
And Macaffer in there on the weekend for most centre clearances on Heppel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Macaffer followed Heppel in. Do you think it's working effectively enough? Because obviously, I don't think we're getting enough of the ball out of the centre or enough ball from the clearances. Do you think that's an issue? Do you think it's something that we need to address?
I don't know. I guess it's one of those things that we'd have to take on a game-by-game basis. I mean, Essendon was smashing us out of the middle, but it was barely something I noticed, to be honest, probably because we were destroying them everywhere else around the ground.
Yeah, their entries inside 50 are a little bit haphazard. I don't expect the same kind of leniency from the Swans midfield or the Swans forward line this week. But it's certainly the game against Essendon showed one thing for me, and that's that our structure, in my opinion, has largely improved with a second tall forward down there in Ben Reid. Now, in your opinion, Maddie and Ed, do you think we need to have a second tall down there for the rest of the year? Or can we afford to go back to what we were playing before as Lynch as the part-time ruckman or Witts as the part-time ruckman / forward?
I've been saying all year we sort of needed what I call 2.5. So we've only been running with 1.5. So Cloak and a ruckman. We've always needed 2.5, whether it's Ben Reid, whether it's Payne, whether it's another ruckman. We need sort of that 2.5 setup.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right there. But the funny thing is, before the Essendon game, I was watching it with a few people, and the first instinct was, with that weather, it looked like that forward line was just going to be too tall. So we were thinking to ourselves, maybe we shouldn't have even, since Reid had the sore knee, maybe we should have rested him. But then in the end, I guess it worked out. So in normal conditions, you'd say, yeah, we definitely need that second genuine marking target, because, I mean, you can put anyone there as a second target, but if they're not going to take attention away from the opposition defence, then it doesn't really make a difference. But Reid at least is someone they genuinely have to worry about.
Well, I wanted to
step previously, and he wasn't really taking a defender away at all. His own opponent and just run off him most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll defer to the wisdom of our Sydney Swans supporter here. I mean, the Swans have scored the third highest points in the league thus far this year, and have seemed to have a forward structure that A, has stood up this season, even with the addition of Kurt Tippett, and B, stood up in finals last year. Vonn, where do you think the greatest success for your side lies in the forward half?
I personally think that, we do have quite a tall forward line, but they are also quite mobile. So it's not, it's not your traditional lumbering ruckman kind of thing, because, Mumford is a bit awkward when he goes to ground, but Pike is quite agile. Another reason why I think our tall forward line works is because we give our forwards the best chance, because when we enter the forward 50, we're often doing it off a run-off half-back, and when everyone's running back, it's often one-on-one contests. So that's probably the main reason why we haven't really been found out for it too much, because, they have the best opportunity to mark the ball.
Well, from what I've seen of the Swans, we'll discuss this a bit later in the Sydney preview. Your run and spread from the contest and from the back half allows you to deliver the ball inside 50 with great success, because you end up having one-on-ones or numbers that suit you. But it seems like the tall forward structure works, and having Pike as that in between, that's more athletic forward / ruckman has really given the Swans great versatility. Would you say that that's been one of the keys to the Swans' success over the last season and a half?
Yeah, definitely. Last season we had LRT, and that's what he could kind of do as well. Like, he could kind of go back and also go forward. And now with Pike, we're seeing him a lot more in the forward line. So it's also that unpredictability. it's like not getting too complacent. And I've actually started to notice that we've actually started to go a bit too much to Tippett. Yep. So that is a little bit of a worry, but generally it's a pretty good spread because, like I said, it's all one-on-one contests, so we haven't been found out for it too much.
Look, we've been skirting around it for most of the conversation has been centred around this week's upcoming game against Sydney. What was it, boys, 9 or 10 times in a row that we gave Sydney a little bit of a pantsing, and it's not nice being on the receiving end. Vonn, you guys got over us last time. How do you think the team has improved since then? Obviously the inclusion of Kurt Tippett, but aside from that,
Okay, well, the last time we played you guys, we're actually fielding a weaker lineup. Last time we played you guys, we had Goods, who had a controversial but also a very fantastic game. And we also had Jeddah. Reid wasn't in the best form, but Morton was decent as well. And the ins that are new now is Tippett, obviously. We've also got Brandon Jack. Shaw's back, and we've also got Mitchell and Lamb. So it's actually a much younger Sydney lineup, and I think that's where Collingwood can really expose us, just because, these youngsters, especially Mitchell and Lamb and Brandon Jack, they haven't really come up against kind of like a final side yet. So it will be really interesting to see how they withstand the Collingwood pressure. So I actually think the lineup has weakened a little bit. It's just that as a team we've gelled a bit more.
I mean, it was comprehensive last time. It ended up being 8 goals, and on the night it was Hannabury, Goods, and probably McVeigh that really did the damage, certainly possession wise. You've added the big chess piece, which is Kurt Tippett, and we've touched on him earlier. And you think that perhaps the side's getting a little bit too Tippett focused, but this is obviously another hurdle that Collingwood has to deal with this week.
Yeah, definitely. Last time we played you guys, I thought that our backline and McVeigh played in that backline. So McVeigh, that move at that point in our season, we haven't had McVeigh in the backline before. So that move actually that win kind of set up our season and kind of our form. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But also just, the ability of our halfback to run off Cloak was probably the reason why we dominated against you guys last time. And with Tippett coming back, he's just going to be playing the role that Reid played last time, but he's obviously a massive improvement on Reid. So it will be really interesting to see how Tippett goes.
And just like you're thankful for us running you into form, we thank you for knocking off Hawthorn in the grand final. But boys, there's already been pleasantries and excuses made. They're a weaker side. How are we going to get over the top of them? The ball last time, if I remember correctly, was just bouncing out of our forward 50 like a trampoline. What's changed, and how are we going to be better this time round?
In all honesty, man, it's going to have to just come from the effort. We're just going to have to put in a similar effort to the one we did against Essendon, where it was just constant harassment for 4 quarters. And the thing is, Sydney does the same thing to most sides they play. So the only way we're going to get over the top of them is to do the exact same thing back. It's
incredible, isn't it? It's incredible that you can sit there and watch a Collingwood limp-wristed, insipid performance against GWS and the Gold Coast, and then they come out and will tear through an Essendon or push Geelong and get over the line against Geelong and take apart Richmond, who are a genuine finals contender this year.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a little bit frustrating, isn't it, Matty?
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, it's been happening most of the year.
I think we're one side that relies on intensity almost more than anyone else. That's part of our problem, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. It's probably what we based our premiership year off. Look, last time we played the Swans, I think Luke Ball was only a couple of games back in. We obviously didn't have the forward structure. And as Vonn mentioned, we were going to Travis Cloak and they were repelling out of their backline with these.
Their counter-attack offence it was blistering. I remember I was on the bottom deck in the home seats and they were just smashing us out of the clearances and just running up the ground. It was embarrassing almost.
Yeah, no, I must say I felt the same way. And look, I guess that we have improved as a side. I think we've got a lot of players. I don't think we'll be going into the game with Ben Kennedy, who at the time had only played a few games. Jordan Russell won't be in the side. Marty Clark won't be in the side. And Witts was in the side. I mean, it was a fairly inexperienced lineup. Do you think there'll be any changes made to the side that played this week against Essendon? I mean, it was an 80-point win. Do we need to make changes?
Out of the VFL, there's only one or two possibles. Like Didak could be an outside chance, and Seedsman was our best player, so he'd be in consideration.
Yeah. First instinct says you wouldn't make any changes, but I just think it's going to depend on, I don't know, I think who they pick as the emergencies could actually be pretty important, because when we get up there, it could depend on things like the weather and, you know, who I guess Sydney take into the game as well. I don't know if they've got anyone that should be returning this week, but it's going to be a pretty tricky one.
And we've touched on it earlier with, you know, Sydney's tall forward line. They're going to go in with Tippett. Mumford and Pike will rotate through. They've got Jesse White. Have I missed anyone, Vonn?
No, I don't think so. Not off the top of my head.
But in all, you know, all in all, they're going to come in with three talls, and we're going to have to match up on them with probably Keefe, Brown. Will we need to play a Reid or a Goldsack down back at some point, guys?
Goldsack's the obvious one. If you're going to play Reid up forward, you have to play Goldsack down back, or the other way around.
Yep. Hopefully he's tall enough to play on Jesse White.
That's true. It's one of those. It's one of those days where I kind of miss Alan Tuvey, who'd come in and shut down a guy with the athleticism of White, like he does to a Darling every time we play West Coast. It would have been good to have him around. But look, I think we've certainly improved a long way since the last time we played in the Indigenous round a few weeks ago. All right, Ed. So, what do we think? Are we winning this week? What's your tip?
I think what I was saying earlier, it'll depend on which side comes out, mate. If it's a side that played against Essendon and was putting all that manic pressure on, then I don't see why we can't beat them. But it'll be tough. If Sydney bring their game, they're very, very hard to beat. So we're going to need to be at our best to be able to have a chance.
What about yourself, Matty? Are we gonna once again enforce our dominance over the Swans?
I'd probably have to say no, and usually I'd be the one tipping us to win a game like this, but I just can't go off one game's evidence, I guess, and that's all it is at the moment, off the Essendon game. And we're playing the side, even though they've got a few injuries, I consider the premiership favourites, so it still has to be hard. Although playing at ANZ Stadium does help us. Like at the SCG, we'd have no chance. So
that's a very good call. Vonn, you're the opposition here. You are the premiership favourites. You've been crowned as such here tonight and by most of the footballing world. How much are you going to beat us by, in your opinion?
Look, for me, the team that wins the contested possession, the clearances and the tackles, so pretty much I'm saying how well that your midfield goes is going to determine the outcome. Sydney are first in the league for all three of those stats. So for me, it's quite hard to tip the Magpies. I think I think it'll be a really close game, but I think we'll end up pulling away. So I think we'll only end up winning by like 14 or 15. But that said, I can definitely see an upset.
How many goals is Nathan Brown going to concede? That's a special question for you, Vonn.
Oh, look, Nathan Brown is just going to become the AA backline defender, and he's just not going to concede any goals.
Well, that's good. Let's put him on Tippett then, and just let's make sure he can keep him quiet. And hey, maybe you'll see him out in Sydney on Saturday night after the game, Vonn. All right, we'll move on to the last part of the show, the quick questions, and I'm going to start with you, Ed. Does Darren Jolly play this week?
For me personally, I wouldn't worry about it. I thought Grundy did a pretty good job, and Lynch looked like he was starting to find some touch. So, in all honesty, I'd throw the kid to the Wolves and let him have a crack against the Swans.
What are your thoughts, Matty?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think Grundy and Lynch are the way to go again this week. Sydney, even though they are fairly dominant in the ruck, just can't see Jolly playing this week of how fit he is, and he needs at least one more VFL run.
Yeah, I think that's this consensus amongst us all. Was Nick Maxwell's contract extension a good thing?
Yes.
Go for it, Matt.
Yeah, basically it was a good thing. I think he's deserved to go out on his own terms. Like whether he hands the captaincy over or not at the end of the year is another topic altogether, but he deserved to go on for another year if he wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as the premiership captain, I guess he should get to go on as long as he does, as long as he doesn't put us in a position where we have to make the call for him. That's all.
As an objective supporter here, Vonn, I'd like to ask you this question as well. How have you seen Nick Maxwell, and do you think he should be playing on for another year?
I don't think he's been that great lately. But that being said, I thought he was always just an honest backman. You know, he wasn't ever going to set the world on fire. I think that if he wants to go another year, that's his decision. He's definitely earned the credits to kind of determine his own future. I think that he should go another year just because when I looked at your back line, there were no names that really kind of stood out for me that could really step up. You know, as much as people want to bag him out, he's still got a lot of experience, and that's going to be invaluable.
A well-reasoned and rational response from someone who isn't a Collingwood supporter. I hope that everyone listening, every Collingwood supporter can understand where Vonn is coming from there, because I most certainly do. Will DThomas play this year, Ed?
He certainly wants to, so it'd be nice if we can get him back. I mean, if we do get him back, I don't think he'll hit anywhere near his best. I just think he's been out for too long, but it'd be nice to have him back.
What about yourself, Matty?
I was saying today that he could be the perfect sub for our first final if we can get him into the game by the last game against North Melbourne. If he can play in that game, he could be the perfect sub the following week.
It's a good call. I reckon he could do some damage off the sub coming in 10 minutes into the third quarter. I think that's not a bad call at all. Vonn, this one's for you as well. Is 4:40 a ridiculous time slot for a football game?
4:40 on a Saturday?
I'd say on a Saturday or a Sunday. For me, it's just terrible on both.
I don't mind Saturday games because, you know, that means I can go out afterwards. But Sunday, no, that's just annoying.
Yeah, fair call. What about you, Ed?
Yeah, it's horrific on a Sunday, but I honestly don't mind it on a Saturday. It's probably almost perfect timing on a Saturday.
I just couldn't believe there was another VFL-AFL clash, I must say, for us. Who would have put the VFL game on a Sunday when the seniors are on as well? Matty, is Dane Beams now our best midfielder?
I think he's our most effective midfielder as far as, you know, clean possessions and hitting the scoreboard at the moment.
What about you, Ed? What are your thoughts? It's still Pendlebury for me. I just think he's a little bit. He's just too creative. Like everyone obviously would remember that handball he gave to Sinclair against Adelaide, but then he even did something similar against Essendon as well in the forward 50. I just think, and he's now. It seems that Pendlebury's now learning how to break a tag as well. He's been tagged quite a lot this year and still racking up around 30 possessions a game. So I can't see it being anyone other than Pendlebury.
Switching to a player that was taken a pick after Dane Beams, Vonn, is Dan Hannaberry Sydney's best mid?
No, I don't think he's Sydney's best midfielder. I think he probably runs the most out of all of the midfielders. But, for the reasons I touched on earlier, I actually think you can split Kieran Jack or Kennedy. It just depends on, what your criteria is. If it's clearances, it's Kennedy. If it's attack, it's Jack.
Attack, it's Jack. I like it. It rhymes. Ed, will Dido play again this year, the Croatian sensation?
Yeah, God, I hope so. It's not looking like it right now, but I really hope he does. I still think his disposal is arguably still better than anyone else's in the side, and even with 15 possessions, he can still cut up most teams. So I really hope he does.
What about you, Matty?
Pretty much the same thing. I'd love to see him given a crack, just because Andrew Cracker's had so many chances this year and he's failed just about every single time. So why not give Didak at least one chance before the finals?
That's a fair point. Ed, should Sydney be considered flag favourites?
Yep. At the moment. I mean, I know they're not top of the ladder, but that doesn't really mean jack in the end. It looks like they're starting to hit form again at the right time of the year. They're starting to get a few players back in drips and drabs, so I think they're just timing it pretty well.
Vonn, we've crowned you as favourites already. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, don't. It's very easy to. I can see why opposition supporters would say that, and I'm naturally pessimistic, and I always underrate my own team. But I just feel like we have too many injuries, and even though our depth players have been playing really well, they haven't been tested finals, and I don't think they're going to be able to stand up to that kind of pressure. So I don't actually think we'll win the flag this year.
Okay, very interesting. And the last question, not Collingwood, not Sydney related, but should Essendon have their points stripped? Matty?
Yeah, pretty much yes, but there's a little sort of side thing to this. I wouldn't mind if they kept their points this year and lost them for the entirety of next year. It'd be a bigger punishment because they're not going to win the flag this year. That's pretty clear now. So if you rub them out for the entire of next year, it's a bigger punishment.
Yeah, probably. But I'd still like to, ideally, you'd like to have their points stripped both years.
What about yourself, Vonn?
I haven't really been following the whole saga that much, but if they are guilty, then they should have their points stripped, and I don't think we can choose when to strip them. So I think, yeah, it'll be this year if it does happen. But then I don't really want North Melbourne to make finals, so I'm pretty conflicted either way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, Carlton and North not making the finals, though.
Yeah.
I guess for me, in a perfect world, they have their points stripped this year and their players suspended for next year. So, hey, let's just keep them further away from that 17th premiership as possible.
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess that brings us to the end. The last thing I want to touch on this week is Tyson Goldsack's 100th game in black and white. He's been a good servant of the club. He played in the grand final replay and kicked the first goal. And I fully credit him with being one of the decisive factors in their win. Ed, what's been your Goldsack moment?
The Goldsack moment? Well, the first one that comes to mind probably is that first goal in the grand final, but I've always been a big fan of Goldsack anyway. I reckon he's probably one of the most, if not the most versatile player on our list, because you can literally play him anywhere except the ruck, really. I reckon he'll be really important for us coming back in time for finals.
What about yourself, Matty? What are your thoughts on the sack?
I think it's an actual great achievement for him to reach 100 games, let alone he's going to play plenty more after that. Like he was picked 63 or something, and I remember watching him play just about his first game. He was playing on Sean Higgins, and they were both two very young players, and they were just running each other around the ground, and you thought, geez, we've found a player here.
Yeah, look, it's taken him a little while to get there, and he's probably changed roles a couple of times, but I certainly enjoy seeing him out there, and I think we're a better side with him. So congratulations, Tyson, on reaching this milestone for the club. That brings us to the end. I want to say a very special thank you to Vonn, venturing over into, somewhat enemy territory.
That's okay.
Yeah. But
you guys don't bite.
Well, yeah, we don't have Quicky on tonight, so no, that's probably accurate.
That's all right. As long as you guys are brown, you guys have my presence.
well, thank you for coming on, Vonn. And look, with any luck, you'll see him out on Saturday night. And look, who knows? Maddie, a special thank you to you for coming on.
No problem. I've had a lot of fun.
Ed, it's always good to have you on board. It's always good to have another Greek on the podcast. So
no worries, mate. You're welcome.
And I'm the Mighty T, and signing out for another week. Thanks for listening.
This is Dave's segment for round 20 of the 2013 AFL season. And the topic that has been chosen is that can we, last week's game against Essendon, where we smashed them by 79 points, can we back it up this week against the reigning premiers in Sydney? Well, a lot of people say that it was not just because of our good game, it's because Essendon had such a bad lead up to the game, because you had Robertson interview on Wednesday, so they had to concentrate on that and answer his questions he had for the club or what he commented on, and they had to comment back on it. So they're saying that that team was concentrating more on that than the AFL game against Collingwood. So they then came underprepared for our game. But that is not all the truth. We came in and played our best game of footy for the season. We played 4 quarters of pressure football, and we had not done that all year, which was fantastic to see by the club, and really showed how good we can be when we play at our best. So now we're going after Sydney, and we want to play this again. Can we do this? Well, I think we're capable of doing it, but as we have shown in other games, we have tends to slack off and don't put in the 100% like we did for 4 quarters against Essendon. So will it happen? Well, we all hope so, but we'll just have to wait and see. So I'll see you next week for round 21 segment, and go Pies.